A universe where humans are considered the scariest, toughest sons of bitches in the galaxy. We're talking creatures from a planet so harsh, so unforgiving, that the rest of the galactic community dubbed it a death world. Now, you'd think that would be enough to keep the other species on their toes, right? Wrong. Because apparently the universe has a wicked sense of humor, and it decided that what this story really needed was a sunburned human and a bunch of panicky aliens. So buckle up, Buttercup, because this is going to be one hell of a ride. Our protagonist, let's call him Dave because every story needs a Dave, was your average run-of-the-mill human. Average height, average build, average everything except for his uncanny ability to find trouble in the most ridiculous ways possible. Dave worked as a cultural liaison on the Galactic Hub, a massive space station where representatives from all corners of the galaxy gathered to discuss important matters like trade agreements, diplomatic relations, and whether or not pineapple belongs on pizza. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Fight me. Now, Dave had been looking forward to his vacation for months. He'd planned a trip to Zorbax Prime, a tropical paradise planet known for its crystal-clear oceans, white sandy beaches, and the galaxy's best pina coladas. As he packed his bags, he couldn't help but chuckle at the assortment of sunscreens, hats, and UV protective clothing he'd gathered. Better safe than sorry, he muttered, tossing in yet another bottle of SPF 5000. The day finally arrived, and Dave boarded the shuttle to Zorbax Prime, practically bouncing with excitement. As he settled into his seat, he overheard a conversation between two Xylothians, a species known for their delicate, translucent skin. Did you hear? One whispered, their antennae twitching nervously. They're letting a human vacation on Zorbax Prime. The other Xylothian's eyes widened in horror. Great Psyloth, are they mad? Don't they know humans come from a Class 12 death world? They'll contaminate the entire planet. Dave rolled his eyes, used to this kind of reaction. He leaned over, a mischievous grin on his face. Don't worry, folks. I promise not to eat any of the locals. Unless I get really hungry. He punctuated this with an exaggerated wink and a click of his teeth. The Xylothians nearly fainted on the spot. Chuckling to himself, Dave settled back in his seat. This was going to be a fun vacation. As soon as the shuttle touched down on Zorbax Prime, Dave made a beeline for the beach. He stripped down to his swimming trunks, slathered himself in sunscreen, and dove into the warm, inviting water. For hours he swam, floated, and generally had the time of his life. It wasn't until late afternoon that Dave realized his fatal mistake. In his excitement, he'd forgotten to reapply his sunscreen. And now, as he dragged himself out of the water, he could feel the telltale tightness and heat of a sunburn spreading across his back and shoulders. Ah, crap, he muttered, wincing as he poked at his reddening skin. Well, that's gonna hurt like a mother. His colorful description of exactly how much pain he was in was cut short by a piercing scream. Dave whirled around to see a flupian, a small, amphibious species, pointing at him in abject terror. Radiation leaked, the flupian shrieked, their gills flaring in panic. The human is leaking radiation. Dave blinked, momentarily confused. Then it hit him as Sunburn. To a species that had never seen one before, the sudden reddening of his skin must look like, well, like he was glowing with radiation. Before Dave could explain, chaos erupted on the beach. Aliens of all shapes and sizes began running in every direction, screaming about radiation poisoning and the end of the world. Dave stood there, dripping wet and increasingly crispy, watching the pandemonium unfold with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. Hey, wait a minute, he called out, trying to get someone's attention. It's just a sunburn. I'm not radioactive. But his words fell on deaf ears or whatever auditory organs the various species possessed. The panic spread like wildfire, and within minutes, the entire resort was in an uproar. Dave sighed, running a hand through his salt-crusted hair. Well, this is just fan-freaking-tastic, he grumbled, reaching for his comm device. Guess I'd better call this in before they decide to nuke the planet or something. As he waited for someone to pick up, Dave couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Here he was, a supposedly terrifying Deathworlder, causing a planet-wide panic with nothing more than a bad case of sunburn. If this didn't perfectly encapsulate the ridiculousness of interspecies relations, he didn't know what did. Finally, the call connected, and a harried-looking Galactic Hub official appeared on the screen. This is emergency response. What's your... The official's eyes widened as they took in Dave's appearance. By the cosmic egg, are you glowing? Dave pinched the bridge of his nose, trying to summon the last dregs of his patience. No, I'm not glowing. I'm sunburned. You know, when human skin gets red and sore from too much sun exposure. It's perfectly normal and not at all radioactive. The official blinked rapidly, clearly struggling to process this information. But the reports. We've received over 1,000 distress calls about a radiation leak on Zorbax Prime. Yeah, about that, Dave said, gesturing to the chaos still unfolding around him. Turns out, when you don't properly educate people about other species' biology, they tend to freak out over perfectly normal stuff. Who knew? The official's face cycled through an impressive array of emotions: confusion, disbelief, realization, and finally, exasperation. Oh, for the love of, hold your position, mister. Dave. Just Dave. Right. Hold your position, just Dave. We'll send a team to sort this out. As the call disconnected, Dave flopped down onto the sand, ignoring the way it stuck to his sunburned skin. He reached over to his bag, pulled out a pina colada he'd snagged from the now-abandoned beach bar, and took a long sip. Well, he said to no one in particular, at least the drinks are good. Meanwhile, in the upper atmosphere of Zorbax Prime, a galactic hub peacekeeping force was assembling. Ships from a dozen different species hovered in formation, their weapons systems powered down but ready to activate at a moment's notice. Admiral Zix Nax of the Arcturian fleet, a veteran of countless interstellar conflicts, surveyed the planet below with all 6 of his eyes. His tentacles twitched nervously as he addressed the assembled commanders. Gentle beings, he began, his voice grave, we face an unprecedented crisis. A human, yes, you heard me correctly, a human has somehow managed to cause a radiation leak on a Class 3 vacation planet. Our mission is to contain the threat, evacuate the civilians, and if necessary. He paused for dramatic effect. Neutralize the human. A collective gasp rippled through the command center. Neutralize a human? It was unthinkable. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as indestructible juggernauts, capable of surviving conditions that would reduce most species to their component atoms. Commander Blorp, a gelatinous being from the water world of Squish, raised a pseudopod. But sir, how are we supposed to neutralize a human? Our weapons are barely effective against their starships, let alone their biology. Admiral Zix Nax's face tentacles curled into what passed for a grim smile among his species. We have no choice, Commander. The safety of the galaxy is at stake. We'll just have to hit it with everything we've got and hope for the best. As the fleet began its descent towards the planet's surface, none of them could have predicted the absurd reality that awaited them below. Back on the beach, Dave was starting to feel like the star of a very weird one-man show. The entire resort had been evacuated, leaving him alone with nothing but the sound of the waves, the warmth of the sun, and the increasing sting of his worsening sunburn. You know, he mused aloud, working on his 3rd pina colada, when I said I wanted some peace and quiet on this vacation. This isn't exactly what I had in mind. Just then, the sky darkened as a massive fleet of ships entered the atmosphere. Dave squinted up at them, the alcohol in his system making him feel more amused than concerned. Well, would you look at that, he chuckled. The cavalry's here. Bet they're in for a surprise. As if on cue, a booming voice echoed across the beach, emanating from the largest ship in the fleet. Attention, human. You are surrounded. Cease your radiation leak immediately and surrender yourself for decontamination. Dave couldn't help it. He burst out laughing, nearly choking on his drink. The sheer ridiculousness of the situation, combined with the alcohol and the pain of his sunburn, sent him into a fit of hysterical giggles. Oh man, he wheezed, wiping tears from his eyes. This is too much. Hey, he waved his arms at the ships above. Why don't you guys come down here? I promise I won't bite much. There was a moment of confused silence from the fleet above. Then, to Dave's surprise, a small shuttle detached from the main ship and began its descent towards the beach. Dave said, finishing off his drink. Didn't think that would actually work. Go figure. The shuttle landed a safe distance away, kicking up a cloud of sand. As the dust settled, a hatch opened, and out stepped the strangest assortment of aliens Dave had ever seen, and considering he worked at the Galactic Hub, that was saying something. Leading the group was a tall, tentacled being that Dave recognized as an Arcturian. Behind him were representatives from at least 5 other species, each looking more nervous than the last. They were all wearing what appeared to be makeshift hazmat suits, cobbled together from various materials in a rushed attempt at radiation protection. Dave couldn't help but snort at the sight. Well, aren't you guys a sight for sore eyes? And let me tell you, these eyes are pretty damn sore right now. The Arcturian stepped forward, its tentacles twitching in what Dave assumed was either aggression or extreme anxiety. Maybe both. Human, it boomed, voice slightly muffled by its protective gear. In the name of the Galactic Council, I order you to cease your radiation leak and submit to immediate quarantine. Dave sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, folks, I appreciate the concern, I really do. But this, he gestured to his reddened skin. This is just a sunburn. Damaged skin cells from UV radiation? Completely normal for humans, happens all the time. Not contagious, not dangerous to anyone but me, and definitely not a cause for galactic panic. The aliens exchanged confused glances. The Arcturian's tentacles twisted into what Dave could only assume was the equivalent of a raised eyebrow. You expect us to believe, the Arcturian said slowly, that this is a natural occurrence for your species. Dave nodded, wincing as the movement pulled at his tender skin. Yep, hurts like hell, itches like crazy, and makes me look like a cooked lobster, but totally normal. Well, except for the part where it caused a planet-wide evacuation. That's new. A small, rodent-like alien pushed its way to the front of the group. But humans are from a death world. You survive radiation levels that would kill most species. How can simple sunlight harm you? Dave couldn't help but laugh. Oh man, if I had a credit for every time someone assumed humans were invincible. Look, we're tough, sure, we can handle a lot of stuff that would kill other species. But we're not invulnerable. Our own star can still kick our asses if we're not careful. He gestured to his bag of sunscreen and protective gear. Why do you think I brought all this? It's not a fashion statement, I assure you. The aliens huddled together, whispering furiously among themselves. Dave could catch snippets of their conversation. Could it be true? But the radiation readings, what if it's a trick? Finally, the Arcturian turned back to Dave. We will need to verify your claims, human. Our sensors detected a significant radiation spike in this area. Dave nodded, then immediately regretted the movement as it sent a fresh wave of pain across his shoulders. Fair enough. But can we do it somewhere with some shade? And maybe some aloe vera? I'm starting to feel like an overcooked steak out here. The rodent-like alien tilted its head. Aloe vera? Is this some kind of human weapon? Dave couldn't help but chuckle. Nah, it's a plant. Helps soothe sunburns. Though I guess to some species, earth plants probably could be considered weapons. The Arcturian made a gesture that Dave interpreted as the alien equivalent of a shrug. Very well, human. We will relocate to a shaded area and conduct our tests. But be warned, any sign of trickery, and we will be forced to take drastic measures. Dave held up his hands in mock surrender. Hey, no trickery here. Just a sunburned human who really wishes he'd reapplied his sunscreen. As the strange procession made its way towards the resort buildings, Dave couldn't help but marvel at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, a supposedly terrifying Deathworlder, being escorted by a group of nervous aliens, all because he'd gotten a bad sunburn. He said conversationally to the rodent-like alien walking beside him, when I said I wanted my vacation to be memorable, this isn't exactly what I had in mind. The alien chittered nervously. I do not understand human humor. Dave grinned. That's okay, buddy, sometimes neither do we. Several hours, numerous tests, and one very confused alien medical team later, the truth was finally established. Dave's radiation leak was indeed nothing more than a severe sunburn. The spike in radiation readings had been caused by a faulty sensor on one of the resort's monitoring stations, which had been tripped by Dave's overheated skin. As the alien delegation huddled around a communicator, frantically trying to explain the situation to their superiors, Dave sat back in a lounge chair, enjoying the cool relief of aloe vera gel on his burned skin. He mused to no one in particular. I bet this is going to make one hell of a story back at the Galactic Hub. Human sunburn causes galactic panic has a nice ring to it, don't you think? The Arcturian admiral, who had long since abandoned his makeshift hazmat suit, shot Dave a look that could have curdled milk. This is hardly a laughing matter, human. Do you have any idea of the resources that were mobilized because of this misunderstanding? Dave shrugged, then winced at the movement. Hey, don't look at me. I'm not the one who jumped to radiation leak instead of ouch. That guy looks like he needs some aloe. Maybe this will be a good lesson in not assuming every human biological function is a threat to galactic peace. The rodent-like alien, who Dave had learned was named Squeak, he wasn't sure if that was the alien's actual name or just what it sounded like, piped up. But surely you must understand our concern. Humans are known throughout the galaxy as indestructible beings from a deadly world. The thought that simple starlight could harm you is, well, it's unprecedented. Dave couldn't help but laugh. Indestructible? Buddy, let me tell you something. Humans are simultaneously the toughest and most fragile beings you'll ever meet. We can survive things that would liquefy most species. Sure, but we also trip over our own feet and die. We can lift incredible weights but throw out our backs reaching for the TV remote. We're walking contradictions, my friend. Squeak's whiskers twitched in confusion. But that makes no sense. How can a species be both strong and weak? Dave grinned, despite the pain it caused his sunburned face. Welcome to the wonderful world of humanity, where nothing makes sense and we like it that way. Look, think of it like this: we're like those fancy sports cars some rich aliens like to collect. Powerful engines, sleek design, capable of incredible feats. But hit a pothole wrong, and suddenly you're calling for a tow. The Arcturian Admiral's tentacles writhed in what Dave had come to recognize as extreme frustration. This is absurd. You mean to tell me that the most feared species in the galaxy, the ones we've been preparing defenses against for decades, can be laid low by solar radiation? Dave shrugged, immediately regretting the motion as it sent a fresh wave of pain across his shoulders. Among other things, yeah, don't even get me started on allergies, or lactose intolerance, or that weird thing where some of us sneeze when we look at bright lights. The assembled aliens stared at him in disbelief. Squeak's tiny paws were pressed against his head, as if trying to keep his brain from exploding out of his skull. But, you drink acid for enjoyment, one of the other aliens, a blue-skinned being with 4 arms, exclaimed. Dave blinked. What? Oh, you mean coffee? I mean, yeah, it's acidic, but it's not like we're chugging battery acid or anything. Although he paused, a mischievous glint in his eye. I did know a guy in college who could chug an entire bottle of hot sauce without flinching. Does that count? The blue alien made a sound like a deflating balloon and promptly fainted. Dave watched as the other aliens rushed to revive their comrade. Tough crowd, he muttered. The Arcturian Admiral, who seemed to be the only one maintaining any semblance of composure, fixed all 6 of his eyes on Dave. Human. Dave, I believe we may have misunderstood certain aspects of your species. Dave snorted. You think? Look, I get it. Humans are weird. We do a lot of things that don't make sense to other species. Hell, half the time they don't make sense to us either. But here's the thing: we're not invincible killing machines. And we're not fragile little flowers either. We're just human. Sometimes that means bench pressing a hover car to save a kid, and sometimes it means crying because we stubbed our toe. It's a package deal. The Admiral's tentacles twisted in what Dave hoped was thoughtful consideration rather than the prelude to strangling him. Perhaps we have been too hasty in our judgments. This incident, while regrettable, may serve as an opportunity for greater understanding between our species. Dave grinned. Now you're talking. Tell you what, why don't we all head down to the bar, grab a few drinks, and I'll give you the crash course on Humanity 101. Trust me, by the end of the night, you'll either understand us a lot better or be really, really confused. Either way, it'll be fun. Squeak, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly perked up. Will there be cheese? I've heard rumors about this cheese humans consume. Dave laughed. Oh, buddy, have I got news for you about cheese. Come on, let's go. I've got a feeling this is going to be a night to remember. Or forget, depending on how many drinks we have. As the strange group made their way towards the resort's bar, Dave couldn't help but chuckle to himself. Who would have thought that a simple sunburn would lead to impromptu interspecies diplomacy? But then again, that was humanity in a nutshell, turning disasters into opportunities, one sunburned adventure at a time. Word of the great radiation panic of Zorbax Prime spread quickly through the galactic grapevine. Within days, it seemed like every sentient being in the known universe had heard some version of the story. Like all good tales, it grew in the telling. By the time it reached the Outer Rim, the story involved a human single-handedly fighting off an army of mutant beach umbrellas while glowing like a supernova. Back at the galactic hub, Dave found himself the center of attention. Aliens from every corner of the galaxy sought him out, eager to learn more about the puzzling contradictions of human biology. So let me get this straight, a Zygonian diplomat said during one particularly lively discussion in the hub's main cafeteria. You can survive in the vacuum of space for short periods, but you can also die from eating the wrong kind of mushroom. Dave nodded, taking a sip of his coffee, which, he noted with amusement, caused several nearby aliens to flinch.
Yep.
Although, to be fair, most of us try to avoid both of those situations. A Veluxian scientist, her crystalline form shimmering with excitement, chimed in. And you deliberately expose yourselves to controlled doses of harmful bacteria to build immunity? Fascinating. In my species, such an action would be considered suicidal. Well, when you put it like that, it does sound a bit crazy, Dave admitted. But hey, it works for us. Most of the time anyway. As the questions continued to fly, Dave couldn't help but reflect on the strange turn of events. What had started as a disastrous vacation had somehow turned into the biggest breakthrough in human-alien relations since first contact. Researchers from across the galaxy were clamoring for more information on human biology. Diplomatic relations were being re-evaluated based on this new understanding of humanity's strengths and weaknesses. There was even talk of starting an exchange program to allow aliens to experience life on Earth firsthand, although there was some concern about how to protect the visitors from Earth's more enthusiastic inhabitants. And at the center of it all was Dave, armed with nothing but a killer sunburn and a wicked sense of humor. You know, he said to no one in particular as he watched a group of aliens cautiously poking at a plate of spaghetti, I should really write a book about all this. I could call it How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Sunburn, a guide to human weirdness for the galactically inclined. Squeak, who had become something of a constant companion since the incident, chittered in agreement. I would read that book, although perhaps a shorter title might be better. Dave laughed. Fair point. How about humanity? It burns us, we drink it anyway. Still not quite right, Squeak mused. Oh, I know. Deathworlders, they're just like us except when they're not. You know what? I like it. Slap that on a cover with a picture of a sunburned human drinking hot sauce, and I think we've got a bestseller on our hands. As Dave and Squeak continued to brainstorm increasingly ridiculous book titles, life in the galactic hub went on around them. Humans and aliens mingled, shared stories, and slowly but surely began to understand each other a little better. And if, in the years to come, the galaxy's sentient species became a little more cautious about making assumptions, whether about the toughness of humans or the harmlessness of a sunny day, well, that was probably for the best. After all, in a universe full of wonders and dangers, a little caution and a lot of sunscreen could go a long way. Epilogue. 10 years after the infamous Sunburn incident, as it had come to be known, Dave stood on a podium in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Hub. Before him stretched a sea of faces or equivalent sensory organs representing every known sentient species in the galaxy. My fellow sentients, Dave began, trying not to scratch at the formal collar of his diplomatic uniform. We are gathered here today to celebrate a decade of unprecedented cooperation and understanding between Earth and the galactic community. And to think it all started because I forgot to reapply my sunscreen. A ripple of laughter and various other species-specific expressions of amusement swept through the crowd. But in all seriousness, Dave continued, the events of that day taught us all a valuable lesson. It showed us that even the most fearsome Deathworlder can be laid low by something as simple as a sunny day. And more importantly, it reminded us that underneath our various exteriors, be they skin, scales, chitin, or crystalline matrices, we're all just trying to figure out this crazy universe together. He paused, looking out over the assembled dignitaries. There was Squeak, now Earth's official ambassador to the Rodent Confederacy. Admiral Zix Nax, his tentacles now adorned with medals of honor for his role in preventing an interstellar incident. Even the Azylothians from the shuttle were there, no longer cowering at the sight of a human, but eagerly waving their antennae in greeting. In the past 10 years, we've made incredible strides. We've established cultural exchange programs, collaborative research initiatives, and even interspecies sports leagues, although I still maintain that humans should be handicapped in the hold-your-breath underwater competition. More laughter rippled through the crowd. But perhaps most importantly, we've learned to see past our differences and recognize the fundamental similarities that unite all sentient life. We've learned that whether you're a human from Earth, a Zygonian from the methane swamps of Zygo Prime, or a sentient gas cloud from the depths of space, we all share the same basic desires to learn, to grow, to connect, and occasionally to laugh at someone else's misfortune. Dave grinned, gesturing to himself. Preferably when that someone is a sunburned human who really should have known better. As the laughter died down, Dave's expression grew more serious. But let's not forget the real lesson here. It's not just about understanding each other's biology or respecting each other's cultures. It's about recognizing that the universe is full of surprises, and that sometimes the most profound discoveries come from the most unexpected places, or in my case, from a really, really bad beach day. He raised a glass, filled with a shimmering liquid that was safe for consumption by 99% of the known sentient species. The other 1% were provided with compatible alternatives. So here's to the next decade of interstellar cooperation. May our friendships be strong, our discoveries be plentiful, and our sunscreen be always within reach. Cheers. As the assembly hall erupted in a cacophony of cheers, applause, and various species-specific celebratory noises, Dave couldn't help but smile. It had been a long, strange journey from that fateful day on Zorbax Prime. There had been challenges along the way, misunderstandings, cultural faux pas, and that one memorable incident with the Arcturian ambassador and the jalapeno pepper, but somehow they'd muddled through. And as he looked out over the sea of diverse beings, all united in celebration, Dave knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers, and probably more than a few things that could give even a Deathworlder a nasty sunburn. But with a little understanding, a lot of patience, and a healthy dose of humor, they'd face it all together, one sunburn step at a time.